Emily lived in a quiet suburban town outside Nashville, the kind of place where neighbors wave, kids ride bikes until sunset, and life feels predictable. She was a mother of 3, exhausted, fulfilled, stretched thin, but deeply grateful. Her days were a blur of school drop-offs, diaper changes, late-night feedings, and reheated coffee that never stayed warm long enough to enjoy. Her youngest was still a baby, barely crawling, while the older 2 constantly competed for attention. Emily loved them fiercely, but she and her husband Daniel both knew something for sure. Their family felt complete. After many long conversations, late-night talks, and realistic budgeting spreadsheets, Daniel made a decision. A permanent one. He scheduled a vasectomy. For Emily, that appointment felt like closure, not sadness, just certainty. The baby phase, the pregnancies, the hormones, the sleepless nights, all of it was finally behind them. Or so she believed. Daniel had the procedure done in early spring. The recovery was smooth. The follow-up appointment confirmed everything went exactly as planned, and the doctor gave him the all-clear. Emily exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding for years. Life moved on. Months passed. Summer faded into fall. Emily focused on healing postpartum, managing 3 kids under 7, and rediscovering who she was beyond survival mode. She documented little moments on social media. Messy kitchens, tired smiles, honest motherhood, never imagining her story was about to take a dramatic turn. Then came Thanksgiving morning. The house was quiet for once. The kids were still asleep, and Daniel was on the couch, half awake, watching the parade with the volume turned low. Emily padded into the bathroom, not because she expected anything, but because something felt off. She had brushed it off for weeks. Fatigue, normal, mood swings, hormones, nausea, stress. After all, she was barely 10 months postpartum. Her body was still recalibrating. Pregnancy wasn't even on her mental list of possibilities. But doubt has a way of whispering. Earlier that morning, unable to shake the feeling, Emily had ordered a pregnancy test. Almost as a joke, almost as reassurance. Just to quiet her mind. Just to stop the tiny voice that wouldn't go away. She remembered laughing to herself while placing the order. This is ridiculous, she thought. There's no way. When the test arrived, she stared at it for a long moment before opening the box. Her heart wasn't racing. She wasn't nervous. She was calm, confident even. She took the test, set it down on the counter, and turned away. 30 seconds passed. Then, everything stopped. Emily turned back, and the room felt like it tilted sideways. The test was positive, clear, undeniable. No faint lines, no confusion. Her knees went weak. She stared, blinked, stared again. This isn't real, her mind insisted. This can't be happening. Her breath caught. Tears welled up before she could stop them. Not fear, shock. Pure, earth-shattering disbelief. She walked into the living room, shaking, barely able to form words. Daniel looked up, confused, still holding his coffee. She didn't speak. She just held the test out in front of him. For a moment, his face froze. Then his eyes widened. Then softened. Then filled with tears. Emily expected panic, questions, chaos. Instead, Daniel stood up slowly and pulled her into the tightest hug she'd felt in years. "I know this is unexpected," he said quietly, voice breaking. "But maybe this baby is here for a reason." Emily sobbed harder, overwhelmed by his calm, his certainty, his warmth. While her world was spinning, he was grounding it. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other while the parade continued in the background. Balloons floating, music playing, life carrying on as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. Later that day, Emily called her mother. She didn't plan it. The words just spilled out. She recorded the moment without thinking, her hands trembling as she spoke. Her mom's reaction was pure disbelief. Silence, wide eyes, a long pause. "Again?" her mother whispered. Emily nodded, tears streaming, laughing and crying at the same time. The video would later explode online. Millions of views, thousands of comments, strangers sharing similar stories. But in that moment, it was just a daughter and a mother trying to process the impossible. For the next 2 days, it didn't feel real. Emily moved through life on autopilot, feeding kids, folding laundry, answering questions. But her mind kept whispering, "This can't be true." It wasn't until the ultrasound appointment, when the heartbeat filled the room, that reality finally landed. Emily and her mother cried together, laughed together, held hands in stunned silence. Back home, telling the kids brought a mix of confusion and comedy. Her oldest stared at her and said, "Wait, didn't you just have a baby?" Emily laughed through tears. "Yeah, and apparently we're having one more." Slowly, shock turned into acceptance. Acceptance turned into love, and love turned into excitement. But Emily would later admit, the first few weeks were the hardest. She didn't tell anyone. Saying it out loud made it real. Even online, she hesitated. Doubt lingered. Ironically, it was online searches and late-night scrolling that fueled her denial. She convinced herself there had to be another explanation, anything else. Until the symptoms arrived. Morning sickness, exhaustion, that unmistakable feeling she knew all too well. By then, there was no escaping it. This wasn't a mistake, this wasn't a fluke, this was happening. And just like that, the chapter she thought was closed reopened. Before we continue, if stories like this fascinate you, if real-life twists and emotional journeys keep you watching until the very end, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more unforgettable stories like this one. Because in the next part, we'll dive deeper into how this unexpected pregnancy changed Emily's marriage, challenged her faith, and forced her to face a future she never planned, but slowly began to embrace. Sometimes life doesn't ask for permission. It just hands you a miracle and waits to see what you'll do with it. At first, Emily tried to live like nothing had changed. The house was still loud, the kids were still needy, the days were still packed with snacks, schedules, and endless to-do lists. But underneath it all, something had shifted, like a quiet hum she couldn't turn off. Every morning, she woke up with that same thought crashing into her mind before her feet even touched the floor. I'm pregnant. Some days it felt surreal. Other days it felt overwhelming. And some days, if she was being completely honest, it felt terrifying. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed to move through it with a calm strength Emily both admired and resented. He was excited, genuinely excited. He talked about baby names again. He joked about being back in the game. He reassured her every time he saw fear flicker across her face. But Emily was tired, not just physically, emotionally. She had just started to feel like herself again after the last baby. Her body was healing. Her confidence was returning. She had plans, small ones maybe, but plans nonetheless. And now, those plans felt paused, or worse, erased. One night, after the kids were finally asleep, Emily sat alone on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Daniel noticed immediately. "You're scared," he said gently. Emily nodded. Tears slipped down her face before she could stop them. "I don't know if I can do this again," she whispered. Daniel sat beside her, listening, not interrupting, not fixing, just present. "You don't have to be strong all the time," he said. "We'll figure this out together, one step at a time." Those words helped, but they didn't magically erase the fear. As the weeks passed, Emily's body made sure she couldn't ignore the pregnancy anymore. The nausea arrived full force. Exhaustion followed close behind. The kind that settles into your bones and makes even simple tasks feel impossible. Caring for 3 kids while feeling like this felt brutal. Some days she barely made it to noon without wanting to cry. And yet, life didn't slow down. School lunches still needed packing, diapers still needed changing, arguments still needed mediating. Emily learned quickly that there was no space to fully fall apart. She had to keep moving, even when she felt like she was running on fumes. Social media became both an escape and a pressure. Her followers noticed her quieter presence. Messages flooded in. Curiosity, concern, speculation. Finally, one night, Emily decided to share the truth. She posted the video, the pregnancy, the shock, the story, all of it. She expected judgment, criticism, harsh opinions. After all, the internet rarely holds back. Instead, something unexpected happened. The comments poured in, not with shame, but with solidarity. Thousands of women shared their own stories, failed procedures, surprise pregnancies, miracles they never saw coming. Emily read them late into the night, tears streaming down her face. For the first time since that Thanksgiving morning, she didn't feel alone. "You see," Daniel said softly, reading beside her, "this happens more than people talk about." Slowly, Emily's mindset began to shift. She still wasn't ready. She still wasn't certain. But she was beginning to accept. Then came the doctor's appointment. Sitting in the waiting room, Emily's anxiety spiked. She feared complications. She feared bad news. She feared being told something was wrong. When the doctor smiled and said everything looked healthy, Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding for weeks. That night, she placed the ultrasound photo on the fridge, tentative, unsure, but intentional. The kids noticed immediately. Questions followed, excitement bubbled up, confusion lingered. Her youngest crawled past it, unaware. Her older 2 stared at it like it was proof of magic. Family reactions came next. Some laughed, some gasped, some needed time. Emily's father shook his head and said, "Life really doesn't care about our plans, does it?" Her friends ranged from thrilled to stunned. A few asked the questions she was afraid to voice herself. "Are you okay? Are you sure?" And Emily learned to answer honestly. "I'm scared, but I'm okay." As weeks turned into months, her body adjusted. The worst of the nausea faded. Energy slowly returned. The fog lifted just enough for her to breathe again. She entered the 2nd trimester quietly, without fanfare, but with relief. Emotionally, she was still processing. But mentally, something had changed. She stopped fighting reality. She started leaning into it. One afternoon, while folding tiny clothes she thought she'd packed away forever, Emily smiled, not out of obligation, not out of denial, but genuine warmth. "This baby is already rewriting us," she thought. Daniel noticed the change, too. He saw it in the way she spoke, the way she rested her hand on her stomach without thinking, the way she talked about the future, cautiously but openly. Still, doubts crept in during quiet moments, late at night, early mornings. Will I lose myself again? Will I be enough? Can our marriage handle this? Those questions didn't disappear, but they softened. One evening, as the family sat together on the couch, laughter filling the room, Emily realized something important. Her family wasn't breaking. It was stretching, growing, making room. And maybe, just maybe, this unexpected chapter wasn't a setback. Maybe it was a reminder. That control is an illusion. That certainty is temporary. and that sometimes the things we never planned become the ones we cherish the most. But just when Emily felt like she was finding her footing, life threw another curveball. A moment that would test her strength, her patience, and everything she thought she understood about trust and timing. And that moment changed the way she saw this pregnancy forever. By the time Emily reached the middle of her second trimester, life had found a new rhythm. The chaos hadn't disappeared. It had simply become familiar. Mornings were still loud, evenings still exhausting, but there was a quiet steadiness beneath it all. Emily wasn't just surviving anymore. She was adapting. Then came the appointment that changed everything. It was supposed to be routine, just another checkup, another ultrasound, another moment to confirm that everything was still on track. Emily almost didn't bring Daniel with her. She told herself it wasn't necessary. She told herself not to overthink it. But something in her chest felt heavy that morning. In the dimly lit room, the technician moved quietly. Her expression focused. Too focused. Emily noticed the silence stretch just a second longer than usual. Her heart pounded. "Is everything okay?" Emily finally asked, her voice barely steady. The technician smiled gently and nodded. "Yes, everything looks healthy." Emily exhaled. Relief washed over her. But before the moment passed, the screen shifted. The image sharpened. "There's something else I want you to see," the technician said softly. Emily leaned forward. Daniel squeezed her hand. Then she saw it, the tiny movements, the unmistakable outline. 2 heartbeats. For a moment, Emily couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Daniel's jaw dropped. His grip tightened. "Wait," Emily whispered. "What does that mean?" The technician turned the screen toward them, smiling now. "It means you're having twins." The room spun. Every emotion she thought she had already processed came rushing back, multiplied. Shock, fear, disbelief, laughter, tears. Twins. After a vasectomy, after 3 kids, after thinking her body was finally done. The drive home was silent, not because they were upset, but because there were no words big enough to hold what they were feeling. That night, Emily sat on the floor of the nursery, surrounded by boxes she hadn't planned to open again. She cried. Not out of fear this time, but surrender. "This is bigger than me," she whispered into the quiet room. Telling the family was a moment she would never forget. Gasps, laughter, hands over mouths. Someone sat down. Someone else cried. Her oldest blinked and said, "So, 2 babies?" Emily laughed through tears. "Yes, 2. The internet reacted the same way. Shock layered on shock. The story spread faster than ever. But Emily had changed. She no longer felt exposed. She felt grounded. As the weeks passed, the weight of it all settled, not as pressure, but as purpose. Emily slowed down. She rested when she could. She asked for help without guilt. She let go of the need to control every outcome. One evening, watching Daniel help the kids with homework while dinner burned slightly on the stove, Emily smiled. This wasn't the life she planned, but it was the life that showed up. In her final trimester, exhaustion returned, heavier this time, but so did clarity. Emily knew this was her last pregnancy, truly. No more what-ifs, no more surprises. She soaked in the small moments, the kicks, the quiet talks with her belly. The way her kids said goodnight to the babies. On a calm early morning, the twins arrived. Not dramatically, not chaotically, just right. Emily held them, tears sliding down her face, heart fuller than she thought possible. Daniel stood beside her, overwhelmed, grateful, present. Later, Emily would say this: "I thought certainty was safety, but uncertainty taught me trust. I thought control was strength, but surrender changed everything." Life didn't ask her if she was ready. It simply reminded her that love expands, even when you think there's no room left. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters come after the ending you thought was final. And sometimes, the miracle isn't the surprise itself. It's who you become when you accept it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends.